English, and like my Somali is not very good, but it's like, I'm taking classes and I'm learning, and hopefully it'll be better than where I'm at right now. And I don't feel like I'm staying true to my Somali culture, and maybe I can go visit home one day and just put things in perspective about what I am. Like I don't like to call myself Somali American, and sometimes it's really hard because I do live in America and I am Somali, so people would call me Somali American. I am a citizen, and I spend more time here than I did in Somalia, but for some reason, even though I don't speak the language, I still have this big connection to this country that I don't even have any memories about, Because everyone likes to belong, and I know I do not belong in America, I'm not American, and I don't belong in America, I'm Somali. I have a country, although it's not very stable, I do have a country that I can go back to one day, that I plan to go back to one day. And I can't, in the back of my mind, I can't say, okay, I'm Somali, I'm gonna go back to Somalia and then claim I'm American, because then I feel like that's just gonna, the Somali tie that I have is going to be completely wiped out. So although I speak English the majority of the time, I feel like I'm staying true to my Somali culture by, knowing that I'm going to go back to my country one day. I'm going to live there, hopefully, if it's very peaceful. And I can only do that by saying I'm Somali and just reminding myself, verbally, subconsciously reminding myself that I'm Somali, I'm Somali, I'm Somali. I have a country that I'm going to go back to. This is just, a place where I am getting my education. I'm just taking a lot of the resources. I don't want to sound very selfish and say I'm taking the resources and leaving, but that's, kind of what I feel like I'm doing. It comes from people, it comes from the media, it comes from how people treat you. People do treat you differently. Whether it's the fact that I'm Muslim or I'm Somali, I feel like a lot of the time people are like, oh, it's us and them. And I can't claim people who don't claim me. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, I'm American, I've been living here for so long, I'm an American citizen, I have a passport. These people do not want me. I mean, I don't want to generalize, but I've had circumstances where people literally said, oh, you're not American, even though I have a passport, I have a citizenship. And I don't want to claim those people, I don't want to claim America when they don't claim me. It's kind of weird. It's just, I know I shouldn't be thinking like this, but this is, that's how I feel. Oh, definitely, because, when you're younger, you don't really know what's happening. It wasn't until I think I was maybe 11 where, the 9/11 happened, and that's when the first time I've ever felt discriminated against. And, I was being discriminated against. Obviously, a person who thinks logically would know that, a sixth grader cannot bomb the Twin Towers, but it's just this sick mentality where they're like, oh, you did it because you have something similar with those people, and it felt like, betrayal. It felt like I just been stabbed in the back by my people. So that's when I was like, okay, it's not my country. It's not my country. One day I'm waiting for the school bus, and some guy, it was a couple of days after 9/11, and some guy comes, like he's driving past where I'm waiting for the bus, and he sees me and he does a U-turn, and he literally gets out the car and just starts cussing at me, saying, oh, you did this, after all we've done to you, we brought you into our country, we fed you, paid all these taxes for you, blah, 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 and this is what you did to us. And I really didn't know what's going on. I mean, I knew something very bad happened, but there's no possible way I'm gonna go from Minnesota to New York, bomb towers, and then come back to, in time to go to school. Like, there's no way. And someone thinking logically, it was very scary because it's a grown adult, and he's not thinking logically enough, and I really felt that he was gonna hurt me. And it was, he was in my face, and and I was a really short 11-year-old. It was very scary. And just things like that. And ever since I grew up, I've had a lot of cases of discrimination. And and that's just put things in perspective. Like, I'm not American. I may have the documents that I'm an American citizen, but I don't feel like I am at all. Yeah, definitely, because like for the Somali guys, they don't really wear the traditional cultural clothes. And for girls, it's a little bit harder because, you know, every day we walk around with the hijab and, like, you know, a skirt, dress, and that's more visible to people that wear different. The boys can just blend in as African American in there, and that's more widely accepted. But we have a harder time because, you know, our otherness, like you said, it's visible for the whole world to see, you know, and I mean, I wouldn't want to hide it, but yeah. Pre 9/11, I didn't really think about that. Like, there wasn't anything, like, nothing major happened for me to think differently, you know. Post 9/11, it's a little bit different where, you know, you start to watch the news, you start to see people's reaction, people that you knew treating you differently. Like, then it puts things in perspective. And I feel like it all has to do with current times. You know, if something happens in the news that people see and that it's people who you share a similarity with, whether you're wearing a scarf or you share the same language, you share the same religion, if people like you are doing very horrible things, then it's very uncomfortable for you to, you know, retain your identity. You know, you feel like you have to hide it from the world because people might treat you differently, and most likely they will, whether they do it by their actions or their words, or maybe they're just thinking it. People do treat you differently. And I feel like my siblings are in the same boat as I was post 9/11 because of, you know, all the things that's going on in the current times and news right now. I feel like it's the same thing all over again.
We're kind of running out of time, so I'll just cut down what I was gonna say. But like, as you see, Sheena's identity or the way that she frames who she is very fluid. Throughout her life, it has changed, and that's one thing that we wanted to highlight is that there's no fixed identity that exists so far that we've noticed. And for Sheena, her turning points was, you know, pre 9/11 and post 9/11, and her life, although she was very young and it was in the 7th grade, was impacted, and that said something within itself also. And for her, when I discussed to her about belonging, and if you watch the full clip, it was hard for her to say where a safe space is. Like, a lot of the literature on people of color combating racism discusses safe space. There's supposed to be, particularly at Joe Fagan's books. In 1996, he wrote a book called The Experience of Black Students at Historically White Universities, and he discussed what these safe spaces mean. And for black students at historically white universities, these were areas that they could combat racism, where they did not have to deal with issues of discrimination, where they could let their guard down, if I could say that. And for Sheena, she had a hard time saying that even on campus there was somewhere that she could let her guard down, but even at home, she didn't have someone to talk to about this discrimination. She said she didn't want to worry her mother. And another thing I want to point out is the hyper-visibility and invisibility that she discusses. Like, being a Somali woman wearing the hijab, she says that there's this sense of hyper-visibility, that you're wearing Islam and it is a symbol. And also, the invisibility she discusses also, there's a marginalization of her narrative in different areas, or particularly, you know, when she's talking about, hey, I grew up here, I should feel American, but I don't. And that is a lot that we've discovered. One more thing I want to say quickly is Sheena's discussion and her experience of racism and feeling othered, and other people that we interviewed, really there's this kind of narrative that we've discovered, and Liz Fickett from the Institute of Race Relations in the UK has coined this term called xeno-racism, and she defines it as, it is a racism that is not just directed at those with darker skin from the former colonial territories, but at the new categories of the displaced, the dispossessed, and the uprooted, who are beating at Western Europe's doors, the Europe that helped to displace them in the first place. And I think that definition is very useful in terms of what we've discovered so far. But now I'd like to open it up for discussion.
Thank you, Mustafa. Can we get the lights on? And they're here.
They're right here?
Yeah. That's great. Okay. describe are not workplace, but rather community or school-oriented. What are you seeing? What are you thinking? What would you like to ask the students who are creating and doing the interviewing, and sometimes interviewing each other too? So questions, comments.
Sorry.
Well, I was going to ask this privately, but maybe it'll be a good experience for the whole group here. I and my wife have been relating in the Somali community for about 5 years through ESL, and we have been invited by a Somali man. He began to talk to us about a year ago about going to Kenya with him, which we dearly love to do. And so back the first year, we decided in May we'd go to Kenya with him. As we're getting closer and closer, we're hearing less communication from him about this trip. Now, we have a lot of experience in the Native American community and their values and how they relate. And so I'm trying to decide, okay, does this mean the trip is not going to happen since we're not hearing any communication from him? Or does it mean that he's going to call and say, well, we have the tickets in 2 days, we're going? Which does it mean, if it means either? And what's a good response to, it needs to be a face-saving response, or what is a good, appropriate response for us to this situation?
Well, really, I can't. I won't. I'm not sure what you would be doing there, but
Well, we were going to visit. We were going to be living in an apartment building with Somalis and participating in the food and the learning culture, visiting refugee camps and that.
Is it organized?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean like what you would be doing in Kenya, but in your particular situation.
Oh, okay.
Perhaps talking to your friend again, contacting him. For example, airplane tickets are expensive, so if you're going to pay that money to go to Kenya, you better know.
And they're getting more expensive
when and where
each day.
you're going to go.
Is this organized by a group?
No, it's
No.
just going with him.
It's a person-to-person.
Yeah, personal trip.
Hard to know.
And in American Native American community, we really wouldn't say anything. If it happens, fine. If it doesn't, it's okay too. But it would not. It would be difficult for the Native American for us to approach him and say, well, when are we going? Why aren't we making plans? Why aren't we doing this? That would be very difficult for the Native American. And I'm wondering, what the situation is with Somali.
I think as specifically for me as a Somali, I've visited Kenya various times these last couple of years, and also just as Somali people, we don't live on a day-to-day schedule. Life just goes by as it is. It's not something we plan ahead because as Muslims, everything is planned by God. What happens to you, whatever doesn't happen to you, it's already planned.
And I like that, but I'm just not sure how to deal with this.
So honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if it calls you, a couple of days and be like, yo, we're leaving and, please be ready and things like that. Because it's not something that it's planned like 8 months, 5 months prior to. It's just something you just go for it. Like for me, I just went to Kenya last spring after study abroad. It's just like within a couple of days, we're like, oh, we're going to go to Kenya. No talking about anything. We just go for it. So as Somali culture is just, there's no planners, no time. Even when you go to Kenya and you make appointments to visit refugee camps or things like that, you would go there and just wait for a couple hours before you meet someone. It's just, there's no schedule, no nothing, things like that.
So basically, just keep the time blocked out, and if it happens, great.
But in your case, I think it would be appropriate
Contact.
to contact him and ask him, hey, what's going on?
Because there is international travel involved.
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah.
To get by.
It's,
Yes.
it's critical.
I would definitely say contact him, and it's if you get to that airport, it is very crazy airport. It is. You are gonna step into another world that you have never seen before. So I suggest you plan ahead, and I don't know what to say because we don't know the kind of person he is, and we can't really generalize because it's individual based. And another thing that I wanted to say about these interviews are that these people share their stories with us. And it's a very deep thing for someone to come on camera and share those things with us. So we don't want to generalize and say that this is the experience of all Somalis.